Fraser, you speak to a lot of CIOs and CISOs and helping them figure out what they should be doing better. What are the main things you think? That we're not getting right? What else do you think we could be doing differently?
Well, I think from listening to what they have to say, there's a combination of different things. There's always a balance between keeping the lights on running and then growth and what they're going to actually do that's innovative. And I think a lot of them always are struggling. Everyone's struggling with doing more with less. It's a cliche, but everyone's being forced to try and be more efficient, do other things. And so they've got, a lot of them I speak to have got initiatives around cloud enablement and all these sort of things that will enable more flexibility. They're constantly trying to deliver a service to the business, which is what IT is all about, it's facilitating the business. And so it ranges. Others I speak to really see themselves as a technology company that happen to sell shoes, or a technology company that happen to be a bank. You know, it depends on whom you speak to, because technology is it's so ubiquitous. So most of them are struggling with this. Certainly, what we're seeing in terms of security and the CISO's role as a protection thing is the marketplace is really struggling to keep pace with the threats that they face, and that's causing them a big problem because they keep trying, they don't want to keep trying to Hail Mary pass of something that's going to be a panacea to all their problems. And this is what worries me sometimes about AI and machine learning, is that's being portrayed as that's going to be that.
Because we hear those terms a lot, and a lot of the time they're misused. And I think we've got to the point now, and I think it's fair to say a lot of CISOs, they don't know who to trust. I think that's the other difficulty as well.
Yeah, trust is. I think trust is like anything. It's hard won and quickly lost, right? So I think there's a lot of people who try to balance their risk by looking to their existing vendors that they've used for a while, or their existing providers, because they have trust in them. But a lot of that, of what's going on then is basically the classic doing what you've always been doing. So it's a case of, well, I know I'm going to need to innovate if I'm going to change things. I know I'm going to need to do something different if I want different results. But how? What do I do? Yeah. I mean, you and I both recently at InfoSec, and it was noisy in more ways than one. Everyone's sort of saying the same things and crowding and hype and all that sort of stuff. How do you sort the wheat from the chaff? And how you do that is through trusted relationships, which is why oftentimes we find that the best introductions we get are through people who are providers to them already, so reseller systems integrators who have a trusted relationship, who have known the business for a long while, and actually say, well, I'm not just going to put you in this position because you're a new vendor for us and we want to try and sell a load of your tech. It's more a case of, no, you fit. I know what this person's trying to do to get their job done. I know the pressures that they're under. I understand their business. Been selling to them for a long while. In the same way that our personal relationships run on that as well. So it's really about just making sure that the technology fits, but you're getting a route to them where you get to have a sit down, proper conversation, and really just listening to what are you trying to achieve, and then how can we help you do it.
So, and I think one of the key things in building that trust, I think that vendors need to change the way that they operate a bit as well, because I think that the practice of selling the silver bullet, or this practice of fear selling, which I'm afraid is rife, and some of the way in which some of these vendors try and get their message across, I think that it actually just damages the relationship between the industry and the people that need the problem solving as well. And I think that has to change. I think we've got responsibility as vendors to try and operate differently.
Yeah, I think so. And to really understand what the implications of whatever it is that you're offering, how does it fit with the ecosystem of what they're already doing?
That's it.
I think also it's very easy for vendors to come in and think that their solution, and it's an honest thing that you do. You believe in your own tech, and otherwise you wouldn't be at that firm.
Absolutely,
but to go in and go, right, okay, it's all about how does every road lead to this? But it's okay. Well, actually, no. What I've got is a piece of a jigsaw puzzle. So how can I slot that into what you're doing so that the end result is exponentially better? How's that going to work? Because if I do something to you here, that may help you this way, but how's it going to affect this? How's it going to impact the way you do that?
Of course.
And how's it going to integrate with everything else that you're trying to do?
Absolutely. And I think there's different levels of maturity. I think that for a vendor to go in and say, you need to buy our tech now, is naive. It might be that there's other things that are more pressing and more important that they need to do first. So I think that sometimes vendors make the assumption that they need that. You need what we have now, and that might not be the case at all. And I think that
I really agree with that as well, because I think anyone who's in the game for a long time realises that it doesn't serve anybody if you if you have a solution and you try to crowbar it into a situation,
Right.
because they're not going to be happy, you're not going to be happy, and that's not a good relationship. What everybody wants is something whereby both, it's the classic cliches, it's the win-win, everyone gets something from it. So I've had a couple of examples where I've been into organisations and we've had a conversation and we've looked at each other across the table and said, we think there's a future between us now, but
It's
it
not
ain't
now.
right now.
It's not
You've
now.
got to, you can't do this until you've done this, this, and this.
Got it, yeah.
Get yourself sorted out. We talk to people more now about frameworks and how what does their security roadmap look like? What is their vision? What are they trying to achieve? What are the things you're going to achieve in the short term that are going to be just tactical things that you need to get done now? And which one of those things are little steps that take you towards this bigger goal? And critically, which one of those things are you going to do now that could stop you doing something like that in the future?
Right.
Because there's no point taking that step unless you've got a real immediate pain to solve. And then you get that, the classic, we've probably talked about this in the past, you and I, the important urgent graph.
Yeah.
You've got some things that are important and urgent.
Exactly.
You've got to do those. But if you don't do the things that are important that aren't urgent, at some point they're going to become urgent. So
Yeah.
it's just working out which one's where.
I hear what you're saying. I think it's quite idealistic to think that people are thinking that strategically about what really needs to get done and taking that path like that. I fear that, and certainly some of the experiences I've had, is that people are buying vendors that they know. They're buying vendors because they know the colour and they trust the brand, but they're not necessarily taking that step back and saying, what actually, let's start at the very beginning, what is it actually that really matters to our organisation, and let's come up with a plan from there.
Yeah, you're right. And I think sometimes, I think it's the onus is on us to do this. If you want to be trusted by people, you have to be prepared to challenge them.
Right.
And so sometimes, the analogy I prefer to use around this, and I love my analogies, is that everybody knows you shouldn't really drink too much. Everybody knows you shouldn't smoke. And everybody knows you should exercise.
Yeah.
But how many people do? And the people who do follow that pattern are people who are either rarely conscientious, who are planning for the longer term, or they're people who've gone to see their doctor and the doctor's looked them in the eye and say, do you like your kids?
Yeah.
Do you want to watch them grow up?
That's it.
Change your life. And so what we have to sometimes do is in front of people is to ignore that kind of short-termism about, okay, it's all about now, it's all about, and for a vendor, it's all about this week, this month, this quarter, and so on. Yeah. And to be able to say to them, okay, I understand why you're saying that, but encourage them to take a step back and to say, look, you need to see this. You need to see this from another perspective. And I think that's where you can really add value to people. Is one thing we certainly do as vendors is we spend every day speaking to their peers. Right. They're so busy heads down with their own company that it's difficult to do that. So one of the things I really enjoy is I see customer A and I listen. I see customer B and I listen and I suggest. And I see customer C. Then I go see customer D and I say, I'm hearing A, B and C. How does that play back to you? And then that keeps going on. So after a while, you get to a position where you can go and have a chat to them and you don't need to talk about what you do, how you do it, or anything else. You're just sort of saying to them, I'm hearing this. Is that relevant for you? And you actually have a role to say, I can spend all my time speaking to your peers. I can probably pick up some tips and tricks for you that I can bring to this meeting that's useful for you, enables you to take a slightly different perspective. And if you're constantly in the minutiae of things, you will always just be churning through the urgent stuff when there's something else you could be doing. And all the best people I've ever worked for or worked with in various different guises have always been those people who, when things were really hectic, were able just to take a bit of a perspective view and say, okay, we've got to sort this out, we've got to put the fire out,
down a bit.
but let's just think about how we can do this better in the future so we're not constantly in this cycle.
But does that come after a fire?
Yeah, potentially. I mean, this is the other thing. There's wisdom and experience.
Yeah.
Wisdom will say, someone else just tripped over that log, I better not do that. But most people will only learn when they trip over the log themselves. So, and the security industry is very much like this because the implications of this is we're managing risk. Everybody's managing risk, and it's just a case of if something bad happens, it's a lot easier to sort of justify stopping it happening in the future.
Of course.
But then there are other organisations make it more tangible. If you've got a business which is all about intellectual property, then the potential of that being lost is really powerful.
Absolutely,
if it's just income, then you can say, well, there's a profit and loss, bottom line, and I can go, right, okay,
Would the cost of fixing that outweigh that?
And then we lost some brand equity. How do you, all these things, how do they tang up? Well, if it's happened before, you can say it cost us this much.
It's tangible. Yeah.
But if it's IP, it's like, well, it's gone.
Yeah.
So from a technology perspective, when I speak to businesses who are around this, most of the time they say it's no good for us to know faster and better that our IP's been nicked. We need to stop it being nicked.
Understood.
So I think it comes down to risk aversion type of business. And where you see this most, I don't know if you've seen this as well, Aidan, is that when you talk to organisations about security and about risk, it's clear that it is something that is absolutely written into the DNA of some companies, and others it's not. You see some users who sit at a desk and security is somebody else's problem. Yeah, I'll go on the security training, but I'm just ticking boxes, I'm not really interested. Then you go to a petrochemical company and you walk down the stairs using your mobile phone as a visitor, and any one of the members of staff will stop you and say, don't walk down the stairs using your mobile phone, and you put your hand on the railing. And that's when you realise it's all the way through. Whenever I go to an organisation and I see in the car park a sign that says, you must reverse into your car parking space. Why is that? I asked someone, it's because someone did some stats that said, when you reverse into your car parking space and therefore drive out, there are a percentage less accidents. So when I see that in a firm, I think it's going to be a very different conversation to them.
Yeah, interesting.
When I go into another firm and I just see people walking around with their own personal phones, plugging stuff in. So sometimes the job, going back to a question actually you asked a minute ago, is sometimes the job, I think, of the CISO and the CIO is to say, how can we make security something that everyone is conscious of, everyone is taking seriously?
Absolutely.